All right, we're going to go ahead and get started today. Thank you for attending. For those of you that may have just joined and didn't hear my introduction, my name's Darren Carter. I'm the Director of Training at HOA Living. I'll be giving part of the presentation today, and then we have a special guest, Andrew Blomquist, who is an attorney with the Miller Harrison Law Firm. I'm going to introduce him in just a minute. I'm going to get through a couple of housekeeping issues, and then we'll go ahead and introduce him, and he'll be talking about contracts today. So welcome, thanks for coming. This is our RFP and Contract Business Partners training today. And we're glad to have everyone here that's taken the time to work or to come into this training today. We're so glad to have you. Our community manager of the month, we like to announce who's the community manager of the month because it might be one of your managers and you can congratulate them. So our community manager of the month for May is Jamie Pranter. She's with our HOA Living Minnesota office, and she always goes above and beyond. She gets glowing feedback from homeowners and boards. And then she's organized, efficient, and effective. And so we're glad to have her on our team. We're really grateful to have such a great, strong office up there in Minnesota. All right, and then our board member of the month for the month of May. And you can vote for an associate member of the month, or sorry, an associate of the month on your own too. And we'll give you that information in a little bit. But our board member of the month this month is Ken Oveson. He's from La Jolla Hills and the Villages at Green Springs. He is very wise in his reserve money investments. He stays updated on regulations and he serves on multiple boards and does it very well. So congratulations, Ken. If you're on the call, we're glad to have you and we appreciate all your hard work on behalf of your association. Also, we have an education scholarship that's coming up in the application deadline is just June 30th. If you know of anyone who's in your association that's going back to school or going to get a degree or is going to college for the first time or whatever, anybody that's going to be doing some studying, we would love to have them apply for our scholarship, and it's up to $2,500 for whoever wins this scholarship. We have multiple scholarships actually, and we're grateful for the applications we've had already, and we'd really like to see a few more. So if you know of anyone that's going to school, please tell them that they can get information on our website, hoaliving.com, and that we have these scholarships available. All right, there's the presenter that's talking right now. That's me. I'm going to present Andrew Blomquist to you as well. I don't have a picture of him, but he's a partner at Miller Harrison Law Firm. His practice focuses on real estate developments, including representation of community associations, home builders, and developers. He's in charge of covenant enforcement, general counsel, litigation, contract negotiation, and other legal documents. Andrew currently serves as the chair of the CAI Education Committee and is active in all aspects of the Utah HOA industry, from legislative lobbying, speaking at events, and providing presentations and updates on HOA law. So we're really glad to have him. He'll be doing the second half of this presentation today. And as soon as I get done blabbing, then he's going to take over and educate us. So we're really super excited to hear from him. All right, I'm going to talk about RFPs today, and here's our sort of schedule. What's an RFP? What should be included? That's what I'll be covering. And then Andrew will be covering contracts and contract law. So that'll be our agenda for this meeting. So when you're selecting a business partner, and you're needing some landscaping done, or you're needing some roofing done, or you're having a big project that needs to be done, we have to consider the scope of work. Now, what we mean by scope of work is what's going to be done, how much is going to be done, When is it going to be taken care of? When should it be done by? The scope of work is the whole project in and of itself. And we're supposed to remember a few things when we're selecting business partners. And those things are health and safety, especially of our residents, making sure that everything's going to go as it needs to in health and safety, and governing document compliance. We need to know our governing documents and make sure that we're applying the rules that we have set up for our association. A fiduciary duty. So fiduciary duty is, of course, the responsibility of the board to use the money that they have in the association's name for the best service of that association. So we want to make sure that we're following that fiduciary duty and that we are acting in the best interest of the association. Resident expectations need to be considered. What are the expectations of the residents? I know sometimes the residents have expectations of, let's get it done in a day when it's a project that's going to take a week. But we need to understand those expectations and help to set the standards for what's going to happen through communication. We've got to communicate to the members of the association what is going to take place, how long it's going to take place. Is there going to be parking issues? Are there going to be times when they can't access different buildings? Is there anything else that's going to impede their use of their common areas or those kinds of things? So we need to make sure we communicate those things as well. So as we're looking at getting a partner to do a contract for us and to make sure that they're going to know what they need to do by having that scope of work in mind, but we also need to make sure that we follow these cautionary items as well. So the health and safety and governing document compliance, all of that is the board's responsibility. So you need to keep that in mind. An RFP, what is an RFP? It's a request for proposal, and it's used to request bids from contractors on a project. Now, RFPs are a document that you create that tells the contractor what they are going to be doing. RFPs are time consuming and labor intensive. So we want to make sure that we don't use these too often when we don't need to, that we use them in the right places and at the right times. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through here. But it's a way to check prices with contractors and to try and compare what different contractors are going to be able to do with a certain project, what their costs will be, what the warranties are that are on the work. All of those kinds of things, we're going to get that information if we prepare a proper RFP for distribution to our contractors, prospective contractors. It's a way to collect bids for an oncoming project that's non-routine. Now, you may think of landscaping as a routine type thing, but it is sort of non-routine if you're trying to bid out what that's going to be. So it depends on where you are. If you already have a contractor, we can kind of usually use them a few years before we do an RFP, but it's a way to collect bids for non-routine type of things, roofing project or repairs on a building after a storm or things like that that are going to be relatively costly, but that we're going to need to collect bids for. It's not for smaller, less expensive projects. So we'll talk about sort of that in just a minute as well. So I'll put that off for just a second. But we don't need to do RFPs for small, less expensive projects because they're so time consuming. And then it's a list of expectations for the contractors. It's a list of what you want done and how you want it done and when you want it done. And it's a way for you to get those expectations to contractors to be able to bid for that. So that's what an RFP is, a request for proposal. from contractors. Now, RFPs need to include the scope of the work to be done. We talked about the scope, the timelines. So we need to make sure that we specify what we're expecting time-wise. Now, if it's a large project and we're not sure what the timelines are going to be, then it would really be excellent for you to get some professional opinions. If you have a landscaper or somebody that's done roof work or whatever, let's take a roof, for example. If you've had somebody that's done that, ask them what kind of timeline would I use for this particular project. So you don't want to tell the roofer that you're want it done in 2 days when it's going to be a week's project. So timelines is important to keep in mind, and you might need an expert opinion. Expectations of the contractor. What do we expect the contractor to bring to the job? Insurance, what kind of cleanliness we want? Are we having them clean up every day after they work? Or will there be some debris around for a day or two? Or what? We just want to know that ahead of time so we can share that with members of the community. Hours of work. Do we want somebody up on the roof at 5 a.m.? In some places that are really hot, they may want to start at 6 a.m., but is that acceptable for your community? So we need to present them with what the hours of work will be and how long they can work and those kinds of things. And then we want to include as many details as possible to make sure the work is completed satisfactorily. As many details as possible. This is why they're time consuming and they take a lot of work, because you need to present as many details as possible. Now I'm going to show you an example of a RFP, and you're going to be able to see how detailed it is. And that's the kind of RFP we want to get to our contractors so that there's no question as to what is expected of them. So we want to make sure we get as many details as we possibly can in there. Now, preparing the specific information you need helps to secure high quality bids. Defining the project scope and budget. If you have a budget that you're trying to stay within, then include that. That may not be what they can do it for. Maybe they can negotiate with you afterwards, but at least letting them know what you're expecting. And again, getting a professional's input on that is really an important thing. Providing background and introductory information. What does your community expect? What's the sort of history of your community and that sort of thing, and just introductory information so they understand that and they can get the job done in the way that you expect it to be done. Describing the services that you're looking for. Explaining challenges or barriers to success. What are some challenges that could be with this particular project? Let's say you're roofing a 4-story building. How are they going to get up on the roof from there? Is there going to be they're not going to have a ladder long enough, so they're going to have some sort of boom lift or something to be able to get them on top of that roof. Explain those challenges or those kinds of things so that they know. We want to detail your selection criteria and then specify the project's timeline. Make sure that you specify what you're expecting time-wise and any barriers to that timeline as well. So these are the kinds of things that should be included in our RFPs. Now I'm going to show you some comparison or some actual RFPs, but first let's talk about comparisons. You'll never get true apples to apples comparisons with RFPs. You don't want to just look at price. That one may come in a little higher than the other as far as price goes, but the quality of work and they've got a reputation with other associations you've talked to, and that might be worth paying for because they've got a good rep with other associations. They've done a lot of the work. You may get a lower bid from a company that just came into being, but you don't know what to expect from them. So we don't want to just go on price, but we do want to make comparisons between the bids so that we can get the best work that we can. And then different professionals may have their own forms or RFP formatting for providing a proposal. Now, I'll show you that in just a second, but you have to abide by their, rules. If they have forms that they want you to fill out online or anything like that, then you're going to want to do that so that you can get a good quality professional reply from them. All right, so let's look at an RFP example. This is HOA Living's RFP form. So this is what we use. You'll notice that it's all online. How many board members do you have? How often does the board meet? Do you have on-site employees? Now we're of course doing requests for proposal for managing associations, and so that's where our focus is. But this is the type of thing that you may see with other companies. They may have computerized it. You go through the form and fill it out, and it makes it somewhat a little easier because you can explain everything through the computer there and don't have to worry about writing it out yourself. But this is for just for us. So, and I don't know of what your contractors might do. So you'll need to check that out when you request from them. Now, here's one that I wanted to kind of spend just a little bit of time on, a landscaping maintenance RFP example. And notice it says spring cleanup, and that it'll be completed as soon as weather and ground conditions permit, but no later than May 15th. That the complete grounds cleanup, the turf and shrub areas, blow or rake around the buildings and obstacles, remove leaves and debris from shrub beds. See, they're very detailed on what they want from their contractor. Power blow or rake turf areas along boulevards to remove sand, remove foreign material from property turf, all debris, leaves, and grass clippings to be removed from property and recycled. So these are all things that they want for that particular the contract, and they put in here quantity of 1 time. Then down here on edging curbs, sidewalks, and walkways and driveway, they want 2 times. So they're telling the scope of the project in very detailed manner. What they want done once, what they want done twice. On the right-hand side, what they want done weekly. These are all things that can be put into this RFP so that it's obvious what you want done, and there's no confusion between you and the contractor. So RFPs are something that if you're one of our clients, you can ask for help with. Our managers can help with RFPs. We don't want to do them too often because they are, like I said, labor intensive. And in the contract that we have with those that are our clients, there is a limit on how many RFPs you can have. So you'll need to check your documents there to see how many RFPs that the manager will help you with before we charge an extra fee for helping with an RFP. So check that out in your contract and be sure of that before you engage the manager to help you. Now, when should we not prepare an RFP? First of all, small projects that are under, say, $2,000, we don't really need an RFP for those. Those are incidental type costs that we don't have to get a huge bid on from different companies. We just need to pick a company and do it, and just make sure that we're communicating with that contractor what we want. You don't want to burn a bridge with a contractor you're working with by asking for RFPs every year from them. And like number 3 says, we don't need to prepare one every year with existing contractors. If you've got a landscaper that you really like, and they're doing a good job for you, don't price that out again because you've got a good relationship with them. Now, every 3 or 4 years, you might want to do an RFP to check prices and make sure you're getting the best price that you can get. But remember, if you change contractors, there's a learning curve there, and they have to learn about your area, your irrigation, the way the rate the grass grows, all those kinds of things. and that's going to take some time for them to get up to speed. So you want to remember that when you're dealing with existing contractors, that sometimes that relationship you already have with them, if they're doing a good job, is worth keeping rather than bidding it out again. So that's our discussion on RFPs. If you have any questions about RFPs, ask your manager. They can fill you in a little bit more on what needs to be done, how they're done, and show you more examples if they have those. They can show you how they work and that sort of thing. So now what I want to do is I want to turn over time to Andrew Blomquist. And he's going to talk about contract law. So just a moment, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and he's going to start sharing his. And we'll go ahead and talk about contract law from here. Andrew.
Okay, let's see.
Perfect, we can see
Good.
that. Great.
Okay. Okay, to get started, there were a couple points in the Community Association Act that I thought was worthwhile on contracts to make sure everyone's aware of. First of all, the top one talks about contracts entered into during the control period, the declarant control period. So those contracts, it lists some garbage collection, maintenance, lawn care, blah, blah, blah. Just be aware that those, you actually have a statutory right to cancel after turnover as a board. So the developer can't lock you in to certain contracts. However, there are some that they can, and it lists it. If it requires an investment of infrastructure or capital, then they can lock you into a long-term contract as an HOA. So a lot of the most common is probably some type of internet service or cable service. And then obviously if there's amenities, like a golf course or, other types of amenities. So just be aware of that. The other thing, that not everyone's aware of is everyone talks about executive session or, closing the board meeting. Contract negotiations and evaluating bids and proposals is one of the reasons you can close a board meeting. So if you're going to discuss multiple bids and contracts, you can close a board meeting to do that. Okay, to start with, you want to verify your vendor. So a lot of times you're redoing contracts with existing, but sometimes you're getting new vendors. The simplest and probably where to start is a Google search. Just make sure they're a legitimate company. You can move on to a name search with the Department of Commerce. You can enter their name and make sure they're registered with the state. You can do a litigation search. You can have an attorney see if they're involved in prior lawsuits. If you've heard rumors of that, you can make sure that they're not currently in litigation. In certain instances, people need to be licensed. So you want to make sure that you verify their license, which is pretty easy to do as well. And then you can even search if they have disciplinary actions on their license. So it's good to do some background research on your vendors before you hire them. This is just an example of what a typical professional license looks like. It'll have the company name on it. And this is important too, that, who it's issued to, that company name. Later we'll go into that, but you want to make sure your contracts are signed with the appropriate name. Sometimes people do DBAs. They don't use the same name that they're licensed under or registered under in marketing materials. So it's important that you know what entity you're truly contracting with. Again, this is just a sample liability insurance certificate. Most of the time you're going to want to make sure that your contractor's got proper coverage. There's going to be different instances of what you're looking for, depending on what services they're providing. So I wanted to talk about, a lot of times when we're talking about contract negotiation, price is the big thing that's negotiated. But there's a lot of other components in a contract that that can be altered or require negotiation. One of the biggest ones is requiring upfront payment deposits. These can go south quickly, as a lot of you probably are aware. But again, it's a negotiating point. Sometimes it is required. But yeah, this just an example. One where a landscaping company uh, showed up, got a big deposit, and piled up some dirt and rocks and left. I've got another example where we litigated. We paid a deposit to get some shingles ordered in advance, well in advance of the summer. Um, they showed up in June and put the wrong color shingles on the roof. What happened was the shingle color that we had ordered became discontinued, and the contractor made his own determination of what substitute shingle color it would be. And um, they in litigation argued that it was just impossibility of getting the correct shingle. But we prevailed because there was a deposit clause and they were supposed to buy the correct shingles, and if they would have bought them at the time we paid the deposit, they would have been available. So if they are requiring deposits, just make sure you fully understand what that deposit's for, and that you trust the contractor. Um, this gets back to making sure the signature line, making sure you're contracting with the right party. So it's very important, if you're contracting with a entity, any type of entity, LLC, corporation, that the signature line includes the entity name, and the person signing it is signing it under authority of the company, not on their personal behalf, and that there's a title like CEO. Because if we ever have to enforce that contract in a lawsuit, we need to, if you don't have the appropriate name of the business that you've contracted with, or the signature lines proper, we're going to have difficulty suing and recovering from the correct entity or person. Another good thing is not just have the entity sign, but similar to a personal guarantee, um, uh, someone can sign on their own behalf as well. And then they're personally liable for the obligations under that contract. So make sure you pay attention to your names and the signature lines when you're doing contracts. So a breach of contract, you know, everyone, a lot of times it's a matter of interpretation. What truly is a breach as far as what was done. It's easy to say they didn't supply a certain material, but when you're getting into services, um, you want to make sure that you have language similar to this, that there's some type of standard that they're going to do it, because without that, it's hard to determine what standard of work were they, or do they need to be held to. Um, you know, make sure you have insurance requirements, make sure you have a workers' compensation requirement. Um, and you typically, as an HOA, want to have an attorney fee clause. If you look at the last line in this, it agrees to pay attorney fees. So if we ever have to enforce a contract, we get to recover our attorney fees if we are the prevailing party. That's super important, because a lot of times the attorney fees can be as much or more than the contract balance. And so, if you have a $50,000 in damages, and you spend 50,000 in the litigation, and you're the prevailing party, if there's no attorney fee clause, it's a net zero. you get awarded those fees, but you also had to pay, or you get awarded the damages, but you have to pay your own fees. So it's super important to put an attorney fee clause in your contract. This is similar to what we put in all our CC&Rs. So when we have to collect on delinquent owners, the HOA is not out of pocket the fees that they incur to collect that. So make sure that's in your contracts. So going the other way, and this is why it's really important to have someone review your contracts, or someone like your managers at FCS or your attorney, because most contracts by contractors are one-sided to their benefit. And you can't blame them for that, but in this particular instance, there was a contractor hired to remove and reinstall a roof. However, so they took the roof off, it rained, it caused tons of damages, hundreds of thousands of dollars of damages on the interior. However, yeah, 166,000. These are some of the provisions that were in their contract. Basically it says, even if we tear it off and we say we couldn't have foreseen it, we have no liability for anything. So this actually won the day, and they weren't liable for tearing the roof off. There was a storm coming, and any reasonable person that would have looked at a weather app would have known there was a storm coming that day, but they tore the roof off, didn't get it back on in time, it damaged it, and they weren't liable for weather related problems. So it's really important that these disclaimers of liability are evaluated. And again, maybe the contractor won't work with you if they are deleted, but you want to look at it and make sure you're completely aware of what you're signing up for as a contract with the contractor as an association, because basically this contract forced the HOA to take all liability of any even unreasonable work that the contractor was doing. So if you can delete some of these provisions, it's always helpful. The other provision that's usually in there is called indemnification. This is where in the contract, it'll put the obligation on the HOA to indemnify the contractor for anything that happens. So you want to make sure that you're aware if a contract has indemnification clause. Typically, we'll try to put the indemnification the other way, so they're indemnifying us of anything. But sometimes your contractors have indemnification that flows the other way, or at least reciprocal, and it has to and put a negligence standard. So indemnification can get a lot of legalese in it. But again, if you have your attorney look through it, we can advise you of what you're signing up for and what risks you're agreeing to take on. Another one, this is kind of a joke, but auto renewals. You might have some auto renew contracts with landscapers or snow removal companies or whatever. Any of them can be. So there's a couple provisions in the state statute. One is 1370 200s. What's most important about this is when there is an auto renewal contract, they need to make sure that they give you notice of the renewal date, the renewal cost, and options for canceling the contract. Under this statute, they have to provide you this notice between 30 and 60 days out from the renewal period. So the contract's void if they don't do this, so they can't cram down on you. There is exceptions for managers, property managers, repairs to real estate on this, but just know that if you have an auto renewal contract, you may be able to get out of it if they're trying to hide the ball on you and just saying, oh, it already auto renewed on you. The other one is in Title 15. And again, this goes into if these are for contracts that auto renew for more than 12 months. So 1 year or more, then they actually have to follow the process here under Section 2, which is pretty detailed. And so you want to make sure, and it's 30 to 90 days. There's no exception for property managers or people managing, providing stuff. So a consumer under, and I put the definition of consumer here too as well. HOAs are considered consumers, so they're protected under this. So if you have, if you have someone trying to push an auto renew provision that you weren't aware of on you, just know that you don't always have to abide by it. There's a way to get out of it. So yeah, here's just brief takeaways. Confirm pricing, bid, scope of work, the RFP stuff talked about at the front of the presentation's good on that, but even without a formal request for proposal, just make sure you're getting what you're bargaining for. Make sure they're licensed, insured. You've done some due diligence on background searches. Change orders, that's a big one. Make sure there is something in your contracts if there is going to be the potential for change orders. You don't automatically get to do a change order and oral. So with that said too, oral contracts are still enforceable. That's a point that some people don't understand. The biggest problem with oral contracts are what are the terms. So if there's emails or texts or recordings, those types of things can be used to prove that a contract was modified or a new change order was approved, even if it's not written. So some people think, well, it wasn't written and signed. Well, if you've given consent and assented to it orally and there's some type of evidence to prove it, you may have entered into a new contract or amended your existing one. So just be very careful about what you do or don't approve or what you consent to in any type of form. Again, make sure you get the right signatures. Make sure you understand your payments and deposit terms. Make sure you understand any limitations on liability that the HOA has as well as the contractor has. And make sure the terms for a breach are clearly defined, like what would constitute a breach whenever you can. If there's something you're concerned about them not doing, if it's in the scope of work and they didn't do it, then that's a breach. So again, your scope of work and your standard of work is important to put in your contracts. And then obviously your term and termination. You typically want to have the ability to terminate a contract, but again, all of this stuff is bargained for. So the more the stronger the contract is for the HOA, you might not get as good pricing, but you might need it that way. So in other areas, just like a request for proposal, if it's not a lot of money at stake, you can be not quite as diligent on things. There's less at risk. So it's definitely a balancing act and it's a form of negotiation, but just wanted to make you aware of different things that impact your liability and your ability to enforce a contract as you look at each of them. So, and that's all I have.
All right. Hey, great. Thank you, Andrew. We really appreciate your time and we really appreciate you giving us that information. Before we get into questions and answers, our Chief Experience Officer, Jessica Reed, would like to say a few words to the audiences here as well. So Jessica, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in. This was great. Thank you so much, Andrew, for coming and giving us some of your time. We obviously work with a lot of different attorneys. We always recommend that our clients work with attorneys who are very knowledgeable in HOAs in their area. And so we appreciate when you can share that knowledge. Obviously, every association is different. Their documents are different. State statutes are different. And the thing that I've seen, especially from this legislative session or season this year, is it can all change too. So it's very important to stay on top of it and make sure that you understand, how things may impact your association. So I just wanted to jump on a couple of things that that everybody was talking about here. Is we mentioned, not going for RFPs every year. And some of that, we do have a limitation in our management agreement for that, but a lot of the mindset is this industry and the work that you do in your HOA is very relationship heavy, and having good relationships with vendors when they know you're in your association, they do a good job, that is valuable. It is a board member's responsibility to do research and make sure that they're getting the best price. And so really working with your manager on and having a good relationship with your manager helps to identify when you need some of those new bids or RFPs put into place. But if you go and check the price from a vendor every single year, you may burn them out and not have the best relationship there. So it's really a very delicate balance of that relationship and understanding what your options are for your association. So not necessarily avoid going out to get bids, but really being strategic about when that happens. Is your reserve study up to date? Are you using that to plan projects and go out for bid when it's an appropriate time, when the association actually has the money for it? And then with what Andrew's covered, once you get to that point, you've identified the vendor, really being thorough and understanding what you're going through. I negotiate most of our management agreements for new clients. And I love it when people come back to me with a lot of questions. That means they're paying attention, they understand, we're on the same page. It just sets us up for success. And so really I don't wake up every morning thinking, I'm going to go read this contract. State statutes, I've never read more in my life until I started working here, and I've read them for a variety of states, but it's important, especially as a board member and your responsibilities. But that's where your professional management can also come into play and help advise on what relationships they have or what recommendations they can make. And then having your attorney, who's hopefully specifically trained in HOAs and knowledgeable there, will really make sure that you're set for success for you and your association. So if you guys have any feedback on this content or have specific questions, you're welcome to reach out to your manager or reach out to us directly, and we'd be happy to incorporate that, and are also looking for some topics of interest to this group. So if you have anything that you would like to see in the future, please let us know. But thank you guys so much for joining us. I don't see any questions in the Q&A right now, but if there's anybody on here who wants to raise their hand, there is a button down on the bottom of your screen where you can raise your hand and we can call on you. Otherwise, we will see you next month.
All right, thanks, Jessica. So you can see our social media and website and YouTube channel that you can see these presentations on. Again, if you want to review any of the content, then those will be placed on YouTube. Just search HOA Living on YouTube and you'll get to our home site, so you can do that. On the next slide, we've got also a place you can go on our website, hoaliving.com/AES. That'll also get you to the presentations that we've done in the past and this one as soon as we post it. So you're going to have a chance to review the information if you need to. Or if you want to tell somebody else about it and you figure that they could use the information, then you can go ahead and do that, and they can review the information as well. So all right, thanks very much. If you could show the next slide there, Andrew, that'd be great. Our next topic is budget development, and we're going to be on June 25th, same time. And so budget development next month. We'd love to see you there. And if you tell other people that are in boards with you, or that sort of thing, that this AES program is going on, that would be great. We'd love to have as many people as we possibly can. They don't have to be clients of ours. This is just free education for any board members that want to attend, or any homeowners who want to attend. So please let other people know about this, and we'd love to see them there. No questions. It looks like we don't have any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and close the meeting. Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate your time and we appreciate your partnership with us, and hope that you have a great day and a great weekend. Thanks very much, everyone.